My husband humiliated me in front of 600 people, but none of them knew who my mother really was. Welcome to the place where family lies always end up coming to light. If you like intense stories of betrayal, pride, and justice, subscribe and join us until the end. Because this story will completely change in a single night. My name is Valery Novak, and I am 33 years old. On the night of Mother's Day, in the middle of a charity gala filled with businessmen, politicians, and wealthy families, my husband slapped me in front of everyone. The sound echoed through the ballroom speakers. 600 people heard that slap, and then some laughed. I perfectly remember the glare of the crystal chandeliers, the champagne glasses suspended in the air, and the satisfied smile of my mother-in-law, Rebecca Sterling. As she slowly raised her glass, I stood motionless, with blood on my lip, my heart frozen, and thinking only one thing: none of you know who my mother is. But that story didn't begin that night. It began 3 years earlier, the day I married into the Sterling family. I grew up in a small apartment in Akron, Ohio, a single bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a mother who worked 3 jobs to make sure I had a better future. My mother, Helen Novak, arrived from Romania when she was just 23 years old. She knew no one. She didn't speak English fluently. She only had $400 and a determination that would scare anyone during the day. She worked as a court translator. At night, she studied law at the public library. She passed the bar exam on her 2nd try, and ever since I was little, she always repeated the same phrase: "Don't cry without having a plan." Tears serve to identify the problem. Afterward, you solve it. Back then, I didn't understand what she meant until I met Adrian Sterling. I met him at a charity dinner organized by a hospital where I worked in the administrative department. Adrian was charming, elegant, and self-assured. He had the kind of smile that made anyone feel important. For months, he made me feel loved. He remembered every detail I mentioned. He called me every night, brought me coffee at work, and 6 months later, he proposed. I thought my life was finally beginning. The problem appeared as soon as we announced the engagement. His mother, Rebecca Sterling, was a woman accustomed to control. Her husband had died more than 20 years ago, leaving her a massive family fortune, several properties, and a very well-known charitable foundation in Ohio. She managed everything: the money, the businesses, the family decisions, and she also managed Adrian. The first time she looked me up and down during a dinner at her mansion, she smiled politely and asked, "Does your mother still work as a translator?" "Yes," I answered proudly. Rebecca took a sip of wine and said, "How admirable. Some people are born to survive. Others are born to lead." The entire table went silent. Adrian just laughed nervously. I also faked a smile because I still wanted to believe that things could get better. When we started planning the wedding, Rebecca took absolute control in less than a week. She chose the venue, the decorations, the guest list. She even rejected a traditional Romanian recipe that my mother wanted to include in the menu. "Our guests wouldn't understand that food," she said with an elegant smile. My mother didn't argue. She just held my hand and whispered, "People get arrogant when they think you need their approval." I should have listened to her. After the wedding came the small humiliations, comments disguised as jokes, uncomfortable looks, calculated silences during Thanksgiving. I brought a tray of the stuffed cabbage rolls my mother had cooked since I was a little girl. It was our family tradition. Rebecca lifted the lid off the container, stared at the food for a few seconds, and then said in front of everyone, "This doesn't belong on our table." Her daughter Camille let out a loud laugh. Adrian looked down. No one said a word. I felt the heat rise to my face as I slowly picked up the tray. That night, sitting alone in my car, I remembered my mother's phrase, "Don't cry without having a plan." So I did something that would change my life. When I got home, I opened my laptop, created a secret folder, and named it Insurance. I still didn't know exactly what I would need it for, but a part of me understood that someday I would have to protect myself from that family. And I wasn't wrong, because while I was trying to become a Sterling, they had already decided I would never be one of theirs. And the worst part was that my own husband was letting them destroy me slowly. The second year of our marriage started with a house. Adrian found a massive property in Westlake, an exclusive area full of wealthy families and perfectly manicured streets. It had 4 bedrooms, a backyard, and a kitchen bigger than the entire apartment where I had grown up. It cost over $400. Ling. I thought we would talk about budgets, mortgages, and savings like any normal couple, but Adrian already had another plan. "Mom, can you help us with the down payment?" he said while scrolling through pictures of the house on his phone. The word "Mom" always appeared before any major decision. I took a deep breath before answering. "We have good savings. Adrian, we could buy something smaller and completely ours." He looked up immediately. "Why would we turn down the help? Because I want a life where we don't have to ask permission for everything." His expression changed. He didn't look mad. He looked confused, as if he had never imagined that someone could live without, depending on Rebecca Sterling. The next morning, his mother had already spoken to a real estate agent. She chose the neighborhood. She negotiated the mortgage. She even insisted on being listed as a co-owner for family security. When we signed the papers, I felt something strange. That house would never truly be ours. That same week, I opened a separate bank account. I started saving more money, strengthening my professional contacts, and building something that depended solely on me, without telling Adrian anything, because little by little, I was understanding something painful in the Sterling family. Money wasn't help. It was control. A month later, something happened that finally opened my eyes. It was a Saturday night. Adrian was taking a shower when his phone started buzzing on the kitchen counter. 3 messages in a row. I wasn't going to check it until I saw the group name True Sterlings. I felt a knot in my stomach. When Adrian went upstairs to the bedroom, I slowly picked up the phone. I knew his passcode. It was his father's birthday. I opened the chat and wished I hadn't. Camille had sent a picture of me taken during a family lunch. I was smiling while arranging some plates on the table. The message said, "Looks like the maid trying to play elegant." Underneath, there were several laughing emojis, one from Camille, one from Rebecca, and one from Adrian, my husband. I kept reading. There were comments about my clothes, about my accent when I pronounced words in Romanian with my mother, about the food Helen cooked. Rebecca wrote, "The daughter of immigrants never learns certain things." Adrian replied with a clapping hands emoji. I felt something break inside me. I didn't cry. I took screenshots of everything, 47 images. I sent them to my computer and saved them in the folder named Insurance. Then I put the phone back in the exact same spot it had been. When Adrian came out of the shower, he kissed my forehead as if nothing had happened. I smiled at him, and for the first time in my marriage, I faked it. The following months were worse. Rebecca hosted family dinners where she always found elegant ways to humiliate me. "Valerie, darling, you should learn to wear more discreet colors." Some women weren't born to draw too much attention. Other times, she directly attacked my mother. It's admirable that Helen managed to get ahead without a proper family upbringing. Everything always sounded refined, perfectly calculated, just enough to hurt me, but not enough for anyone else to accuse her of cruelty. And Adrian never defended me. Never. One early morning, I woke up startled to the sound of sobbing. I found Adrian sitting in the living room, completely drunk. He was crying over his father. He would have been different with you. He told me, my dad wasn't like Mom. That night, he hugged me tightly. For a moment, I saw the man I had fallen in love with vulnerable, sad, human. I thought I could still save our marriage. But à tout venait. The next morning, Rebecca called, and the sensitive Adrian disappeared again. It was as if his mother controlled every part of him. Months later, preparations began for the grand Mother's Day charity gala, the most important event of the year for the Sterling Foundation. Over 600 guests, business executives, politicians, hospital directors. Rebecca ruled that gala like a queen. Camille coordinated the organization, and I was assigned minor tasks: greeting guests, arranging place cards, checking lists, visible but unimportant jobs. I accepted everything with a smile, because while they saw me as someone insignificant, I was observing, and in my line of work, observing details was exactly what I did every day. One afternoon, I went to Rebecca's office to fetch some event folders. On her disk, there were open financial documents. I didn't intend to look, but the numbers immediately caught my attention. Donations received $340. Ling, ling, ling. Expenses reported $295. Ling, ling, ling. There was something strange, very strange, that same night. As I walked through the ballroom where the gala would be held, I noticed the electronic donation board placed at the entrance. The figure displayed was different, $80. Ling, ling, ling. I stood frozen. There was a discrepancy of $60. Ling, ling, ling. In my profession, large financial discrepancies never appear by accident. I took a picture of the board, and for the first time, I felt fear, not for myself, but because I began to suspect that the Sterling family was hiding something much darker than simple family humiliations. That night, I drove 2 hours to my mother's house. When Helen opened the door and saw my face, she immediately knew something was wrong. We sat in the kitchen. I told her everything: the mocking, the secret chat, Adrian's indifference, and finally, the foundation's numbers. My mother listened in silence, without interrupting me. When I finished, she took a sip of coffee and asked something very simple. "Do you have proof?" I nodded slowly. "Yes." She held my gaze for several seconds, and then said the words that would change my life. "Perfect. Now let them destroy themselves in front of everyone." We were 2 weeks away from the Mother's Day Gala, when everything started to click. Rebecca Sterling managed the event's organization like a military commander. No one made decisions without consulting her first, not even Adrian. One morning, I received the official seating chart via email. I looked for my name out of curiosity. Table 47. At the back of the room, behind a column near the service door, Adrian would be seated at the head table next to Rebecca and Camille. I stared at the screen for several seconds. It wasn't a coincidence. It was another message. Another public reminder that I would never truly belong to that family. I called Adrian immediately. "Why am I at table 47? I heard a tired sigh on the other end of the line. "Mom wants the immediate family near the stage. I am your wife. Adrian, please, don't make a big deal out of this." I didn't reply because, at that moment, I understood something important. Adrian was no longer trying to defend me. No. He simply expected me to accept the humiliations in silence. The next day, Camille assigned me another task. You'll be greeting guests at the entrance. You're good at smiling. Her sweet tone had venom hidden underneath. I accepted without arguing. And that decision ended up being their biggest mistake, because Camille also gave me full access to the donation database to help with the thank you cards after the event. The password arrived that same night in my email. I opened my laptop slowly while Adrian slept upstairs and started reviewing. At first, everything seemed normal. Names, transfers, invoices, until I found two strange companies, Lakeview Floral and Heritage Audio Solutions. Both had received massive payments over the last 3 years, but something didn't add up. I searched the business registries. Nothing. No websites. No real offices. No employees. One address corresponded to an abandoned storefront. The other, to a closed laundromat. I felt a chill run down my spine. The payments totaled almost $60. 000. Exactly the missing amount. My breathing slowed. In my line of work, that had a very clear name, Shell Companies, Financial Fraud, I spent hours gathering information, dates, invoices, screenshots, bank transfers. I organized everything into a detailed report and saved it in the insurance folder. Then I did something else. I copied all the files onto a USB drive and mailed it to my mother, just in case. 5 days before the gala, something happened that completely destroyed any hope I had left. I had gone down to the kitchen for water when I heard voices coming from the pantry. The door was ajar. Camille was talking to Rebecca on the phone. Mom, the speech has to be strong. Everyone needs to understand who Valerie really is. Rebecca let out a little laugh. Don't worry. I've been preparing it for weeks. I stood frozen. Adrian will side with us, as always. Camille continued. And when she loses control in front of everyone, they'll finally understand she doesn't belong here. Exactly. Rebecca replied. Some people need to be reminded of their place. I felt nauseous. It wasn't just spontaneous cruelty. Everything was planned, the whole gala. The speech, the public humiliation, my seat in the back. They wanted to destroy me in front of 600 people, and they expected me to cry, to scream, to react. But I was no longer the same woman who had arrived trembling at Thanksgiving with a tray of Romanian food in her hands. Now, I had proof and a plan. The night before the gala, there was a family dinner at the Sterling Mansion. Everything seemed elegant and calm. Too calm. Camille talked about flowers and decorations while the waiters filled the wine glasses. Rebecca barely looked at me until she mentioned my mother. Is Helen still living in that little apartment? She asked with fake curiosity. Some people really get used to small lives. Camille smil. Well, not everyone is born for more. Adrian kept cutting his meat. He didn't even lift his head. And then Camille said the same words Rebecca had said years ago. She will never be a true Sterling. The table went silent. I felt my chest burn. I waited. I waited for Adrian to say something. Anything. But he didn't. He just kept eating. I slowly got up from the table. No one tried to stop me. I went into the bathroom and locked the door. My hands were shaking. I took out a small white handkerchief embroidered with my mother Helen's name from my pocket. She had saved it since my wedding. I took a deep breath. And instead of crying, I sent a text message. Mom, tomorrow, I'll be ready. She replied, less than a minute later. Good. That early morning, I couldn't sleep. I walked barefoot through the house looking for a charger in Adrian's office. When I opened the desk drawer, I found something unexpected: an old, yellowed envelope with a handwritten note for Adrian. "Open when you get married." My heart skipped a beat. It was the handwriting of Richard Sterling, Adrian's late father. I looked at the door, then slowly opened the envelope. The letter was barely 2 pages long. Richard wrote about Rebecca, about her need for control, about how fear could turn love into manipulation. But there was one sentence that left me breathless. "If one day your wife tells you she is suffering, listen to her. Don't make the same mistake I did." I stood motionless. Richard knew exactly who his wife was, and yet he never confronted her. I took pictures of every page and carefully put everything back in the exact same place. When I returned to the bedroom, Adrian was fast asleep. I lay down next to him, and for the first time in 3 years, I stopped feeling afraid, because the next day, during that gala filled with money, fake smiles, and champagne glasses, the Sterling family was finally going to destroy itself in front of everyone. The night of the gala arrived, wrapped in luxury and perfect appearances. The main ballroom of the Briarwood Club shined under enormous crystal chandeliers. There were white flowers on every table, live music, and waiters serving champagne, as if nothing bad could ever happen in such an elegant place. But I knew the truth. Behind those smiles were years of humiliation, manipulation, and disdain. I arrived at 6 p.m., wearing a simple dark blue dress, nothing extravagant, nothing that would draw too much attention. Camille was waiting for me at the entrance with a fake smile. "Perfect. Stay here," greeting guests. She didn't even hand me a formal badge. Just a cheap name tag with my name written in black letters, Valerie. No last name. As if I weren't really part of the family. I took a deep breath and took my place near the main door. For almost 2 hours, I greeted politicians, businessmen, doctors, and prominent members of the city. Many were polite to me. One woman even smiled and said, "You must be Adrian's wife." What a lucky man. I felt like crying, because that stranger had shown me more respect in 10 seconds than my own in-laws had in 3 years. At chapter 3. Dinner finally began. I walked toward table 47. At the back of the room, behind a massive column, far away from the stage. From there, I had a perfect view of Adrian sitting next to Rebecca at the head table. He didn't even turn to look at me. The music stopped at 8:15. Rebecca walked up to the stage, wearing an emerald green dress covered in diamonds. The entire room went silent. She took the microphone gracefully and began her speech. "Welcome to our annual Mother's Day Gala." Applause. "Tonight we celebrate the women who hold their families together with dignity, values, and sacrifice." More applause. Then her tone changed subtly, like a knife sliding in slowly. Although not everyone truly understands what family means, I felt the air grow heavy. Some people started looking at each other uncomfortably. Rebecca kept speaking. "There are women who marry into hard-working families and try to impose strange customs, foreign traditions, and behaviors that do not represent our values." I heard a few nervous chuckles. My heart was beating slowly, very slowly. She was doing it in front of everyone. Rebecca locked eyes directly on me from the stage. A true mother raises her children with the right principles, not in tiny apartments, barely surviving as translators. My entire body froze. She had insulted my mother. At a Mother's Day gala, the woman sitting next to me covered her mouth in horror. Another older lady gently took my hand. "Are you all right?" "Dear," I nodded slowly. And then I realized something important. Rebecca was waiting for me to react, to cry, to scream, to break down in front of everyone. But I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. She raised her glass. Let us toast to true families. The crowd responded with weak, uncomfortable applause. And then I stood up. 600 people turned their heads at the exact same time. The sound of my footsteps echoed through the entire ballroom as I walked toward the stage. I could feel Adrian's eyes following me. I stopped in front of Rebecca. I didn't step up onto the stage. I looked up at her from below and spoke calmly. My mother worked 3 jobs to give me a future. She never needed family, money, or charity galas to prove she was a good woman. The ballroom went completely dead silent. Rebecca widened her eyes with fake indignation and dramatically placed a hand on her chest. "Do you see what she does?" she said. Looking at the audience, "She attacks me at my own gala." Then Adrian abruptly stood up. He had been drinking too much. I could see it in his eyes. He walked toward me quickly through the tables. "Apologize to my mother," he ordered. I stared right at him. No. Everything happened in seconds. His hand sliced through the air and struck me directly in the face. The sound exploded through the room's speakers because the microphone was still on. The slap echoed throughout the building. Some people let out small gasps. Others stood frozen. I tasted the metallic tang of blood in my mouth. My cheek burned. But the worst part wasn't the blow. It was seeing Rebecca smiling, as if she had finally gotten exactly what she wanted. Camille let out a nervous little laugh near the bar. And then I heard something even more cruel. "So dramatic," she muttered. She can't even take a joke. No one moved. No one said anything. Except for an older woman with grey hair who stood up horrified from a nearby table. May God. I slowly took out the white handkerchief, embroidered with my mother Helen's name. I wiped the blood from my lip, folded the handkerchief carefully, and looked Adrian straight in the eyes. In that instant, I understood that my marriage was over. No screaming, no tears. It was simply over. I turned around and walked toward the exit, while hearing Adrian yell behind me. "Valerie, come back, you're overreacting." And then Rebecca's voice cut through the room, still using the microphone. "Litergo. They always come back." The ballroom doors closed behind me. The cold May air hit my face. My hands were trembling just a little as I walked to my car. He got in, locked the doors, and for several seconds, I sat completely still, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror, the blood, the red mark on my cheek, the empty eyes. Then I picked up my phone, searched for my mother's name, and pressed call. She answered on the second ring. "Valerie." My voice cracked for the first time all night. "Mum, please, come get me." There was a brief silence. Then I heard her breathing change. What happened? I closed my eyes and finally said the words that would change everything. Adrian hit me in front of everyone. My mother arrived exactly 40 minutes later. A dark sedan pulled up next to my car in the nearly empty parking lot of the Briarwood Club. Helen Novak stepped out wearing a simple black coat and flat shoes. No makeup. No jewelry. No fear, only determination. When she opened my car door and saw my face, she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply looked at the red mark on my cheek and the dried blood on my lip. Then she said something I will never forget. "All right. Now, listen carefully." Her voice was cold, but it's easy, like someone used to making important decisions under pressure. "First, we will take pictures of your injuries. Then, we will go back inside the ballroom. We need witnesses. And finally, we will go to the police tonight." I looked at her, surprised. "I don't want to go back in there." My mother held my face in her hands. "You won't be alone anymore. And for the first time in 3 years, I believed her completely. We walked into the building together. The music was still playing. The party was still going. As if hitting a woman in front of 600 people was just a minor, awkward interruption. But as people saw us return, the conversation started dying down one by one. Rebecca was the first to notice. Her expression changed the moment she saw Helen walking next to me. She approached quickly, trying to regain control. "Valerie, if you've come back to apologize..." My mother interrupted her with absolute calm. "My name is Helen Novak. I am here because your son hit my daughter in front of everyone present." The entire ballroom fell silent. Even the band stopped playing. Rebecca tried to smile. "That is a family matter." Then Helen took a step forward. "No, Mrs. Sterling, hitting a woman is a crime." The sentence dropped over the room like a bomb. Adrian slowly stood up from the head table. The color had completely drained from his face. "Valerie, can we talk about this at home? She's not going back with you." My mother replied. Rebecca started losing her composure. "You are destroying this family in front of everyone." And then I spoke. For the first time that night, I felt true peace. "The family is already destroyed. Rebecca, only now. Everyone can see it." I took out my phone, opened the image folder, and showed the screenshots of the family chat, the insults, the mockery, the messages humiliating me for years. Some people started murmuring in horror. Camille took a step back. But I wasn't done yet. I looked directly at Rebecca, and I also checked the foundation's accounts. Her face changed instantly. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked scared. "What are you talking about, $60? 000 missing. Shell companies. Fake invoices." The silence became absolute. Adrian stared at me, as if he didn't recognize me anymore. Rebecca started trembling. "That's a lie. I have copies of everything." "I know," I replied, "and they've already been sent outside this house." Camille dropped her folder on the floor. The sound echoed throughout the room. At that moment, a man slowly approached from a nearby table. He was an off-duty police officer. "Mum," he said to me, "do you want to file a formal complaint?" I looked at my mother. She nodded just once. "Yes." 15 minutes later, 2 patrol cars arrived at the club. The blue lights illuminated the massive windows of the ballroom, while the guests watched in silence. The officer took my statement in front of everyone and photographed my face, my busted lip, the red mark on my cheek. Then he turned to Adrian. "Did you strike your wife?" Rebecca quickly opened her mouth. It was a misunderstanding, but Adrian knew there were too many witnesses, too many phones recording, too many people watching. He looked down and answered, "Yes." The sound of the handcuffs clicking shut around his wrists was louder than the slap. I watched as they took my husband away across the ballroom, where 30 minutes earlier, his mother was toasting to true families. Rebecca looked petrified, and then something unexpected happened. The perfect woman finally lost control. "This is all your fault," she screamed at me. "You came here to destroy us." My mother watched her in silence for a few seconds. Then she calmly replied, "No, you destroyed yourselves." That night, I slept at Helen's house. The next morning, I called a divorce lawyer. 3 days later, I officially moved out of the house in Westlake. I didn't ask for money. I didn't ask for properties. I wanted absolutely nothing from the Sterlings. I only wanted my freedom. The financial investigation began a few weeks later. The shell companies were quickly discovered. The foundation lost major sponsors. The annual gala was cancelled, and Rebecca had to step down publicly. Camille also lost her job. For the first time in their lives, both had to face a world where the Sterling name could no longer protect them. Months later, I moved into a small apartment near my mother's house. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine. The nights felt peaceful again. On Sundays, we cooked the Romanian recipes together that Rebecca was so ashamed of, and one afternoon, while we were eating dinner, Helena asked me, "How do you feel now?" I thought for a few seconds before answering, "Free." Because I understood something important. Dignity isn't about enduring humiliations or staying where you aren't loved. True dignity appears when you decide to stand up and walk away with your head held high. And that was exactly what I did. If this story impacted you, leave your comment, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs a reminder that they should never let anyone destroy their worth.